This is live.
He's probably looking.
Should I try minimizing that?
Upsell.
Should I try minimizing it?
Sure.
What? Did you just click on a picture of him? What? How did that picture come?
He sent it.
Oh.
What is that?
I was just like,
Oh wait, do we have to click that? And then
I don't know. See if you can click that.
Click it.
no, I think he's just gonna. Yeah. So now our screen is just a picture of me.
Oh.
Hold on.
That's a big picture too.
What happened?
Oh,
That's
he
on the other
just
tab.
yeah.
What?
What happened?
Click the start button again.
Hi.
Hey.
Hold
Hi.
on.
Hi.
We hear you, but we don't see you.
Oh, you don't see me. Okay.
Give me 1 second.
No, that didn't work. How about now?
Okay.
Okay.
Still no.
Got it. Wait, before it? Yeah, I think we're ready.
I can see you guys.
That's good.
Oh, take me there.
Take me.
Any other call?
No,
Just take me there.
Because then he'll have to switch.
Oh, we can.
Click OK. There we go. I think we're good to go.
Oh, you can see me.
Yes.
Hey, wait, why are we leaving?
Click on the.
Click on the picture. There we go. How are you doing today? Thanks so much for taking some time out.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
So I just wanted to let the students go around, sort of introduce themselves to you, and then we have a whole bunch of questions.
Sounds great.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'm Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
I'm Kevin Wang. I run a business dealing with software.
Great. What kind of software business?
It's mainly dealing with limited releases and basically sneakers in general and fashion.
Okay. Is it limited releases of a video?
Of sneakers, yeah.
Of what?
Of sneakers, like Jordans.
Oh, sneakers.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So he sells bot programs that allow people to click the purchase button really quickly when something's released so that they can buy it off the initial retail.
Nice. Sneakerhead. I love it.
Varun?
I'm Varun. I'm a senior, and I'm also working on a software program.
Cool. What's your product?
It's like an app I'm trying to make that can diagnose cases of dementia automatically.
Wow. Cool.
And I'm Shiv.
Are you working on a product as well?
No, not currently.
Okay. And Kevin, did you say you're? Was it? I'm sorry, Kev. What was the first gentleman?
I'm Steve.
Steve. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah.
What was your product, or are you?
I'm not working on that, so no.
Not working yet. Okay, great.
So we all just got into Cambridge, and we're just getting going and developing different ideas that they're going to be working on over the next month. But we sort of spent all morning today brainstorming a whole bunch of questions. So I'm going to sort of just dive right in, and then hopefully I'll let these guys jump in and ask away.
Sure.
So you said that the hooked model is for businesses that need repeat customer engagement. But isn't it true that all companies now need some sort of repeat customer engagement?
Well, it's not necessarily, well, for one, not all companies need repeat engagement. You can think of lots of companies where you just buy the product once. If I live in San Francisco, if I go buy a ticket to see Alcatraz, that's kind of a one-time thing. I'm not going to come back again and again and again. So that business, doesn't necessarily need me to keep coming back every time. Of course, it would be nice, but that's not, the business will be just fine if they capture more people at the top of the funnel, even if they don't have people re-engage. But even if you're the kind of business that would like that, what I think the criteria is around whether you need unprompted engagement or not. So lots of businesses can bring people back without a habit. You can buy advertising. You can do search engine optimization. You could have a physical storefront at the street corner with your taco stand or something to get people to buy your product and services. So those aren't the kind of companies that necessarily need habits. There's a lot that they can learn from consumer psychology to improve their products and services, but I wouldn't say it's a requirement to do business. But there's this other host of products, particularly the kind of products that we're using on our digital technologies, that require habits, that they die if they don't have a habit. So when you think about Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and Slack, all of these companies, if they had to spend money to bring you back, they're out of business, right? They can't survive. Facebook dies if you don't have a habit, right? Snapchat dies if you don't have that habit of coming back on your own. And
Yep.
so when it comes to digital products, because the real estate that we have to influence people, to send them a trigger, is getting smaller and smaller, right? From the desktop to the laptop to mobile and now to wearable. Every time that interface shrunk, habits became more and more important because there just wasn't as much physical space to send people a message to do something. And so that's why habits increasingly are more and more important.
Now, Twitter is interesting. We spent a little bit of time this morning talking about that because their engagement numbers seem to be going down. What suggestions would you give to the Twitter board right now to sort of re-engage and create a smaller hook or a faster hook for their customers?
Right. So did everybody have a chance to read the book, by the way, or should I?
Most of us got through most of it.
Okay. So there's this, the third step of the hook model is the reward phase. And the reward phase is not just about giving the customer what they want, it's also about this variable reward. I talk about B.F. Skinner's work with pigeons and how he found that, this was 60, 70 years ago now, that he found that when a pigeon would receive a reward on a predictable schedule of reinforcement, they basically would eat they would click on this disc to receive the food pellet, to receive the reward whenever they were hungry. But then when there was variable reinforcement, meaning sometimes the pigeon would peck at the disc and nothing would come out, and then other times the pigeon would peck at the disc and they would receive a reward, when there was a variable ratio of reinforcement, the behavior increased. The pigeon would peck more frequently. And of course, these variable rewards are what makes slot machines so habit forming. It's what makes spectator sports fun. It's what makes sneakerheads into sneakerheads, because what's going to be on the next set of shoes? There's excitement, there's variability, right? If it was the same sneaker every single week, it wouldn't be that interesting. It has to be variable. It's what makes us fall in love, right? Romance is all about uncertainty, about can you get that date with that hot girl, and that it's all about uncertainty. So to answer your question back to Twitter, this is Twitter's problem, was that for a while, everybody was signing up for Twitter accounts and they were following everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened with the Facebook timeline, I'm sorry, with the Twitter timeline, is that the Twitter timeline has, until very recently, everything from everyone you follow, right? So you open up the Twitter timeline and everybody who you follow, you will see their tweets. That meant that the more people you followed on Twitter, the crappier your feed got. So the ratio of interesting stuff to mundane stuff went the wrong direction. As opposed to Facebook, look at Facebook. And the genius of Facebook is that the feed is not everybody you follow. It's not all your friends. It's this algorithmic feed that only shows you things that Facebook knows you're going to be interested in. And of course, that feed gets better and better with time, whereas Twitter's timeline didn't do that. That's Twitter's biggest problem, and that's what they're fighting tooth and nail now to fix, is they've started adding these programmatic algorithmic features that make the feed better, and not just everybody you follow, but they have this section now that says things you might have missed. And the reason is they're trying to improve the ratio of interesting stuff to not interesting stuff. Right now, it's out of whack. It's just too boring.
So we watched one of your other videos where you were talking about painkillers versus vitamins and what's attractive for investors and for consumers. And one of the questions we were asking ourselves is, can you create a need for a painkiller? Is it possible to create the need and then sell the painkiller, or does that need have to be inherent when you come up with a solution?
No, you can't do that ethically.
Okay.
You can do it, but not ethically. And what I mean by that is that finding these internal triggers is not a matter of creating those internal triggers, it's finding them. So what we want to try and do, the reason I love what I do for a living, and the reason I'm so passionate about the role that business and technology can play in improving people's lives, is that we have one of the rare opportunities from all the professions on earth we as product builders, as product designers, are one of the few profession charged with fixing people's pain, right? That's what we do. We solve people's pain. And so the idea there is to then look for the pain, right? So we find these internal triggers, and these internal triggers are emotional discomfort. It is emotional discomfort that has been with humanity for 200,000 years, right? We've all, since the beginning of time, felt loneliness or fatigue or uncertainty, and so it's or boredom. So what we want to do as product designers is to find where those internal triggers exist in people's lives and fix those pain points, build products and services that scratch those itches. Now, the point between painkillers and vitamins, the reason I make that point is because the traditional orthodoxy that I teach business school students, that we're all kind of supposed to know about, and if you've read Lean Startup, what the Lean Startup will tell you is that you really want to find these painkillers, right? The things that people can say, oh, I need a product to do this for me. And that's fine. These aren't necessarily bad businesses. But I think there's also this other category of problems that users can't articulate, right? When you say to a user, hey, I'd like to solve your boredom or your loneliness. What do you think? I've got this product. If you would have went back in 2005 and said, look, I've got this product that's going to let you post status updates. What, do you want it? Should I build it? People wouldn't know, right? So with those kind of products, when we think about what made Facebook successful on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, for those type of products, they cater to internal triggers, to itches that people can't articulate, but that they still want solved. And so that was the point around why it's so important to not dismiss these vitamin products.
So when we were reviewing the different phases of the hooked model, the one that we kept stumbling on the most, I think, was this idea of investment on part of the consumer. I was hoping you could sort of clarify a little bit more about your thoughts there, and how do you trigger an investment just as you would try to trigger an action?
Right. So you drew the right parallel. So if you look at the hook model, right? So if you've got trigger, action, reward, investment, there's a connection between the trigger and the variable reward. I'm sorry, the internal trigger and the variable reward, meaning the variable reward has to scratch the user's itch. And there's also a connection between the action and the investment, in that they are both behaviors. And the same rules apply around B equals MAT, right? Making the action as easy as possible to do in the action phase as with the investment phase. The difference, what defines the two, is when and and if there is an immediate reward. So what defines the action phase is something I do before the reward to get the reward. Whereas the investment is something I do for a future reward. So the action for Facebook is open the app and start scrolling, okay? But when I submit a photo, when I comment, when I like, I don't get any kind of immediate reward. Mm-hmm. Right? Nothing really happens when I do those things. Later, something will happen, right? If I like something, I'm going to get a notification. I'm loading the next trigger because I think eventually I'm going to get that reply, bringing me back through the hook. But liking, commenting, putting it, adding a picture, all of those things are investment because they don't provide an immediate reward.
So you were talking about investments and how it provides a future reward, right? So in terms of something like Wikipedia, how do they keep getting people to come back? Because not many people log in. There are people who create content, but how do you get the users, the readers, to come back?
The readers to come back, or the contributors?
The readers.
I think actually it's not Wikipedia that owns the reader habit. It's Google. Wikipedia owns a habit with the content contributors. So those people, the 1%, maybe it's probably a fraction of 1% of people who actually edit, they have a habit around editing, and they're investing every time they make those investment, they edit the content, they're making an investment in a future reward, because when I add content to Wikipedia and somebody then changes in the future, I'm brought back through. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, I would bet that the overwhelming majority of people who come to Wikipedia as a content consumer are coming then through Google first. And it's really Google that owns that habit, which is not good for Wikipedia, frankly. It's that's where they're weak. And that, if Google wants to screw with them and put out their own Wikipedia, which I don't know if they're going to do, but my point is that it's not Wikipedia's habit, it's really Google's habit.
And you talk about a lot in the book the more investment that you can get from a consumer into your product, the stronger the habit is, or the stronger the connection with your product is, and it's harder to break the cycle. So then
Right.
the obvious question is, how do you break the cycle of a competing company to engage with that customer with what you think is a better solution?
Right. Really, really good question. And it's one that I didn't put an answer to in the book, but I've since gotten this question and thought a lot about it. So I think there's 4 ways. There's 4 ways to get a competitor's customer habit. So you might want to write these down as you're thinking about who you're competing with. The first way is faster hooks. So if you can facilitate a user experience where people can go through the hook faster, trigger action, reward investment faster than the competition, that's one way to win your competitor habits. And that typically happens when there's some kind of change of interface that makes going through that hook substantially easier to do. The next way to do that is the second way is frequency of passing through the hook. So we've got velocity through the hook is the first way. So how fast you can get people to go through the hook. The second way is how often they do that. So if you can figure out ways in their lives to have them use the product more often. So for example, when Facebook was built desktop first, but Instagram was built mobile first. So when Instagram was in people's pockets, same essential hook, but the fact that this product was built for the phone as opposed to the desktop meant that people carried it around and they could pass through the hook more often in their day, not just when they were at their dorm room, but whenever they were on their smartphone. So number 1 is velocity. Number 2 is frequency. Number 3 is making the reward more rewarding. So if you can figure out some way that third step of the hook, the reward phase, if you can make it not just a little bit better, but way better, right? And the stats tell us that the reward can't just be a little bit better, it has to be 9 times better to get someone to switch. So if you think about if you received a message, 2 messages at the exact same time, one from Facebook and one from Snapchat, and you know that one from Facebook might be your Aunt Matilda, but that one from Snapchat is going to be with that cute girl you were flirting with the other day, which one are you going to open first, right? You know you're going to open the Snapchat first because the reward is more rewarding. The result of the action is going to be more exciting. It's going to be more interesting than the previously available solution. And that holds true in enterprise software or medical software just as much as it does consumer internet. So velocity, frequency, reward more rewarding. And then the third way, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with the hook per se, it has to do with user onboarding, is if you can figure out how to make entering the hook easier. For example, when you think about how Google Docs dethroned Microsoft Office. So Microsoft Office used to be the most wide Google, 2006 or so, Google Docs was awful. It did, a tiny fraction of what Microsoft Office can do today. But what was really special about it was that you didn't need any software, right? It was all in the cloud and it was free. So if you're a college student and you're looking for your first word processor or spreadsheet software, you've got which hook are you most likely to enter in the first place? Microsoft Office, that's expensive and requires software, or Google Docs that you can start using for free right now on your browser. So that's the fourth way, easy in. So velocity, frequency, reward more rewarding, and easy in.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, so going back to the reward sector of the hook cycle, how would you better structure the rewards to incentivize more investment from your customers?
So the reward is separate from the investment. So the reward is what gives the user relief from their internal trigger. So if the internal trigger is boredom, the reward has to entertain. If the internal trigger is loneliness, seeking connection, well, then the reward has to connect people together. The investment comes after the reward. And in terms of, well, how do you get that investment? You've got to think of what is something that the user could do to make the product better over time. That's the criteria. What could I do with this sneaker software that makes it better and better the more I use it? The reason I come in the first place is because I want that shoe and I don't want to miss out. I have fear, right? The internal trigger is this fear that I might miss out, right? So that's why I use the product in the first place. And then the reward should satisfy that fear. Before, when I come, you have to get in my head, you're taken care of. Your fear has been resolved. That's the reward phase. The investment is what can I do in this software to make it better and better over time. I tell you my personal preferences. I tell you my friends who are also sneakerheads. I tell you what size shoe I am. I build a profile. I do all these things that make the product better the more I use it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, in terms of marketing, what do you think might be some of the risks of using scarcity as an external trigger?
So scarcity as an external trigger. I didn't get the last part about the external trigger.
What do you think might be some of the risks of using the technique of scarcity? So, making the customer feel like they have to go out and purchase the software or download the app right away, or it won't last for very long.
Right. So okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with the external trigger, but just what's the risk or virtue of using scarcity? So scarcity is a heuristic that we know at times irrationally increases motivation. I think the biggest risk is when it's done inauthentically, right? If the user can sniff out that it's bullshit, I think that's the biggest risk. So I'm trying to think what other risks might there be? I think another risk is that users become desensitized to it. So when it's actually true, it doesn't work, right? There's a boy who cried wolf scenario there. We probably see that on Amazon, right? It used to be for a long time, everything on Amazon, there was only 3 left of. Like that's obviously not true. And from what I understand, they're experimenting with actually doing away with that because it proved after a while not very effective, right? People can see that's not really the case. But generally, if it's authentic, if it's perceived to be authentic, it can be very useful.
Do you see any trends, just talking about external triggers, do you see any trends happening in business today? You get inundated with emails and with notifications, but do you see anything else sort of evolving that companies are using that are really successful external triggers, especially for first-time engagement?
So one trend I've been watching quite a bit that I'm very bullish on is what I call the conversational UI. Some people call it bots. I call it also assistant as an app, but I think the term that may work is CUI, conversational UI, which is instead of having apps or dashboards or like a website to go to do something, instead I think a lot of products, particularly in the enterprise space, are going to move to chat. That it's just going to be something that we conduct in WeChat. In China, it does this already. Or if you think about Facebook Messenger or Telegram, I think there's going to be a lot of products and services that use this very simple chat interface to do very complex tasks. And so what I'm looking for, I haven't seen a company that does this yet. I'm looking for what I call a double-sided bot, essentially. So I think there's potential in the end user experience to be given a kind of a decision tree like structure that looks like a chat interface, but also on the customer service end. So a customer service representative is given a similar bot that assists them in selecting one out of a few potential replies. So basically it scales their productivity. If you want a few examples of this that I think are working pretty well, there's a news app called Quartz. That's a straight bot. There's no human interaction on the other end, but it's a really great news app. I'm typically not very excited by news apps, but I think Quartz does a really good job, Quartz. And then there's another company called Pana, which I invested in, which does more of this assistant as an app model, where it's not 100% bot. There's actually human beings on the other end, but it's facilitated through a bot. And that's called Pana, P-A-N-A. It's like a travel agent for people who travel a ton. And they basically take care of all your travel stuff. So all the stuff you would need to call up the airline and say, hey, can you make my meal gluten-free? Or can you change my seat? Or I forgot my frequent flyer number. Can you add it? You just text them, or what looks like a text in the app, and they take care of it for you. So I think that's a really big deal. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Being in Boston, we hear a lot about Paul English and his new Lola travel company. That seems to be in a very similar space.
What is that? What's the name of the company?
Lola.
How do you spell it?
Lola. I think
Lola Travel?
Lola Travel, yeah.
Oh, cool. I haven't heard of it. I'll check it out.
Yeah, he just came out of a stealth mode, so to say, pretty recently.
Neat. Okay, that sounds okay, so he's one of the founders of Kayak. Cool,
Yep.
I'll check it out.
Yep.
Instant access to personal travel service. This looks very similar to Panda. Wow. Fuck, you just screwed my investment.
Oh, better to know about it now.
Right. Anyway, I'll check it out. That's great. So, okay, it's actually really validating because, right now they were one of the few, but competition is a good thing. It means there's a real market, especially if this guy from Kayak thinks there's a real market. So I'm not crazy. That's good. But yeah, I think this conversational UI, and I think that there's particularly in the enterprise space, for when you said you're working in for Alzheimer's, a perfect example. Instead of lots of buttons and lots of options and crazy navigation trees, and having to think about the information architecture, you don't need that with a bot, right? With a bot, it's just the onboarding, the investment phase is just interacting with this conversation. And frankly, I think the future is that people are going to stop caring if it's a human being or if it's a bot, because you won't be able to tell the difference, right? Sometimes it'll be all bot, sometimes it'll be all human being, sometimes it'll be a human being facilitated with a bot. But after a while, you won't care because it gets the job done.
Does anyone have any other questions?
So yeah, just pertaining to external triggers. In one of your blog posts, you talked about the successfulness of external triggers and like 3 methods to use to make sure your external triggers actually engage the customer. And so one of those was aligning external triggers with internal triggers. And so how exactly would you do that? How would you test it?
Yeah. It's a really good question, and I see way too many people missing this point. So the difference I talk about, I think you might have seen in the video I did recently about this. I'm not sure, but basically the key to sending external triggers that are welcome versus external triggers that feel like spam is context. And so what you want to do, the reason I start off the hook model with the internal trigger is that it's your job. If you're creating a habit forming product, the first thing you have to think of is what's the time and place where the user feels this itch? Where are they in their lives where they have this problem, right? Psychologically, even if they don't realize it, where are they feeling boredom or loneliness or uncertainty or fatigue, whatever it is that you're going to cater to, where and when do they feel that in their lives? And once you know that, that's where you send them the external trigger. So what most everybody does today is they send external triggers, notifications and SMS and emails whenever they feel like it, as opposed to taking a few minutes to think about when would our user most need this. And there's so much data out there that people are just leaving on the table: geolocation information, time information, calendar information. All of this is at your disposal that can give you clues to when the user is most likely to be receptive to your message. There's actually a technology that just came out of a university in Barcelona that just by seeing what apps you're using, these academics figured out that they have a very high likelihood of detecting if you're feeling boredom. You know how powerful that is? Like, what if a news site could tell you the minute you're feeling bored, hey, we see you've got a few extra minutes, here's an interesting story you might like, right? Incredibly, how much more powerful is that versus right now, there's probably a meeting calendar invite on all of your calendars, but there's probably 10 stupid apps that are pinging you right now over stuff that's totally irrelevant because you're in this meeting. So that's the kind of stuff that I think we have a responsibility to think about, so that we don't send notifications and external triggers willy-nilly. We think about when the user is most likely to actually need our product and services because they feel the itch. So that's what that's all about. Closely coupling the external trigger with the internal trigger.
So there are 2 questions I sort of wanted to wrap up on, and we'll let you get on with your day. The first is, what advice do you have generally for young entrepreneurs, for student entrepreneurs who are looking to test out your model for the first time?
Yeah, so the best rule, so I talk about this a little bit in the chapter on the morality of manipulation, and I give this test that I think I would like product makers to consider before they figure out how can they use the hook model? How can they use persuasive technology? The question is no longer can we influence people? The question is should we? And so the two-part test to know if you're doing it ethically is, number one, to ask yourself, is what I'm working on materially improving people's lives? And that's a question that only you can answer, right? So you got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, is what I'm working on materially improving people's lives? But that's not good enough. The next thing you have to ask yourself is, am I the user? Now, why do I do that? A lot of people don't like it that I say that, but I think that's a great test to ask yourself, because I'm making people break the first rule of drug dealing. Anybody know the first rule of drug dealing?
Never use your own supply. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, never get high on your own supply. I'm not going to ask how you know that, but let's just run with it. So never get high on your own supply. That's the first rule of drug dealing. So the reason I put in that test of am I the user is because I want you to break the first rule of drug dealing, because if there are any negative effects to the product you're working on, guess who's going to know about it? You are. So number one, that puts you in a good ethical position, right? I believe what I'm working on is materially improving people's lives, and I'm the user. I think that puts you in a good ethical place. It also gives you a tremendous competitive advantage, because the hardest part about building a product or service is understanding if the person you're building for actually wants the thing you're making. So the best way to hack that is to build for a user you understand intimately. You. And if you do that, you can't fail, because starting a company to make a bunch of money is something that people who are bad at math do, because the odds are totally not in your favor, right? If you look at the statistics of who makes a lot of money on startups, you've got to be crazy to do it for the money. You've got to build a product or service because you want this thing to exist. And even if you don't make a dime, you will have built the thing you want to see in the world. And if you build for that reason, you can't fail. Whereas if you build to make money, you're most likely going to fail. So I think if you follow that two-part test of, am I building something that materially improves people's lives? Am I the user? And if you say yes to those two questions, not that you can't make money saying no to those two questions. Lots of people make products that they don't use and that they don't believe actually materially improves people's lives. It's not about money or no money. It's about where do you most likely increase your odds of success, and where are you in a good moral, ethical place?
And then the final question is sort of my catch-all and my parachute, if you will. It's sort of a two-parter. One, what's the one question you wish you were asked more? And sort of the second part of that is, what's the best question you've ever been asked by an audience member, or student, or conference participant? Trying to crowdsource my questions here.
That's a good one. I mean, I think the best questions I get are the ones that I don't have the answers to. So I've been thinking a lot about personal habits and personal addiction. How do we deal with it? What kind of responsibilities and pressure should we put on companies that are building products that profit from addiction, as opposed to a habit, right? This book isn't called How to Build Addictive Products. The book is called How to Build Habit-Forming Products. And that's done very intentionally, because addictions are these behaviors that hurt the user. And of course, we would never want to build a product to hurt people. Whereas habits, we have good habits, right? We have healthy habits, and that's what I want to help people build for. But some of the questions I struggle with are around, well, how do we do this? How do we make sure that other companies don't use what you're teaching when they don't give a shit about addicting people and harming people? And frankly, I don't have the answers to that quite yet. So that to me is a really good question, because I don't know the answer yet.
Fair enough. Well, any last questions or thoughts from any of you guys? Well, thanks so much for taking the time out to speak with us today. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone did. And we just really, really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for reading my stuff, and keep in touch. I do office hours every week. If you work with the model and you're like, hey, I don't understand something, or I've still got this one question, I do these office hours in 15-minute increments. You can just book the time, and we'll have a phone chat on my blog, nirandfar.com. Happy to stay in touch.
That's still you and not a chat bot.
Yes, well, it's me when you call me, but the booking the appointment is all automated.
Fair enough. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Good luck, guys.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye bye.
We still have 0 viewers.
We have 0 viewers the entire time. And we're still live.
We had 6 viewers before.
Oh,
Now at 5.
So the entire
Wait, we
thing
never introduced
recorded.
it to Tim Rao.